That's perfect, yeah. Okay, friends, let's gather. Nice to hear the sound of family, yeah? So, friends, let's gather. We gather, of course, in pain and in grief. We also gather in comfort and consolation, and with deep love and respect to mourn the loss of Phyllis Finger. We're also here to give honor to her beautiful life. And so we begin the service with the recitation of psalms and prayers. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing, a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. Let's recite the 23rd Psalm, our Psalm of Comfort.
Adonai roi lo exar binote sheyarbitzeni al menuchot menuchot yenaleni nafshi shovev yishovev yancheni v'magelei tzedek yancheni v'magelei tzedek leman shemo gam ki ele begitz al maved lo ira ki ata imadi shivtecha o mishantecha Hamoni Taruch lefanai Shulchan neged tzorai Dishanta Vashem en Roshi Kosiri Vaya Atov Chesed Yedefoni Koyimechayai Shavdeti bevet Adonai Liorech
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He helps me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Friends, our condolences go out to Phyllis's family, David, her husband of 53 years, Jennifer and Michael and Gabby and Glenn, sister and brother-in-law Shelley and Martin, her grandchildren Sydney and Sean and Hattie and Shayna and Zayden, who she loves so much. Phyllis was born to Sydney and Irene Sitver in Queens. Her father, Sydney, was an attorney and worked for the Civil Service Commission. Mother Irene was a teacher in the elementary schools. She grew up with her brothers and her sisters, Shelley, Marcia, and Doug, and she grew up in a traditional New York family. They belonged to a local shul, Adath Israel. Her father became a shul president. She hung out with her friends on the handball court and played squash against the wall. Phyllis was athletic, loved to play all kinds of sports. She had lots of neighborhood friends, and back in the day in Queens, they all hung out on the streets of New York and laughing and playing. And just by chance, one of her friends, who was also laughing and playing on the streets of New York, was a boy by the name of David Finger, who also loved to play squash and handball and stickball, and his family belonged to the local shul Adath Israel, and his father became a shul president also. Phyllis was deeply involved in Jewish youth groups as a child and a teenager, Young Judea, Tel Yehuda. She went to high school at Long Island City High School in Queens, and she graduated early. Then she was off to Harper College at SUNY Binghamton to study history, and she graduated early. She started graduate school at the age of 19. Could you imagine? Phyllis was smart and studious, focused and driven. David and Phyllis had a lifelong relationship filled with friendship and filled with love. And when David went off to the Air Force, they decided to take the opportunity to get married on the Air Force Base, Wichita Falls, officiated by the Jewish chaplain. After the Air Force, David enrolled at the University of Michigan. David and Phyllis moved to Ann Arbor, and she embraced her passion for Judaism and started working for United Jewish Appeal, and they got involved in the synagogue, and she became president of the sisterhood and really embraced her Jewish upbringing and her Jewish life. Then in their pivotal move in 1978, David got a job right here in Houston, Texas, and here they arrived. They started to raise their beautiful family, Jennifer and Mike. And with the kids, Phyllis was everything. David was on the road for his job quite a bit, and so Phyllis was in charge of the home and the kids and everything. One of Phyllis's great strengths was her organizing skills, luckily, and she had lists and strategies. She was incredibly efficient in her work life and in her home life. As she was raising the kids with David on the road, Phyllis enrolled in an MBA program at the University of Houston. She was smart and she was hardworking, and so she climbed up the ladder and became a teaching fellow, enrolled in the PhD program, all the while running the home. She transferred to law school. She made law review, became a board-certified lawyer, and a certified mediator. She practiced law on her own in a successful practice for 14 years. And then David's global software company was in need of a management consultant. And David had so much confidence in Phyllis and so much respect for Phyllis that he recruited her to work in the company. Quickly, she developed a specialty in human resource management software. Clearly, she was an extraordinary woman with talent and intelligence and drive. And she also used all that talent as a wife and as a mother and as a friend. Phyllis gave great advice to her kids as they were growing up. She was wise and always looked at the bottom line in making her decisions and helped them to make their decisions and gave them advice. Sometimes wanted advice, sometimes not wanted advice, but they always figured out later that her advice was always spot on. She loved the grandkids and saw them as often as she could. And when she would pack up the family for a trip, she broke down the project into components, and for each component, there was a separate list, right? She was a brilliant organizer, and she used that skill at work and at home. Her kids remember her as a mother who was deeply dedicated. They remember her passion for politics and sports, especially the Astros. She was an incredibly supportive mother. She thought things through, and then she cut to the chase, figured out the bottom line. She was pragmatic, and she was wise. The kids report she had as much knowledge in her as an encyclopedia, which made playing Trivial Pursuit with her pretty frustrating for the rest of the family. When I asked Mike and Jennifer to describe their mother from their perspective, they asked me to imagine a classic Jewish mother who was also a lawyer. She had her friends and she had her community. She spent time connecting with her social groups, quilting and sewing and mahjong and arts and crafts and book clubs. She was an avid reader, history books and murder mysteries. And David and Phyllis loved spending time watching murder mysteries and watching the news. Phyllis was a serious news junkie, and she kept up with everything going on all the time. She had a brilliant and pragmatic mind, and so she was able to analyze political situations with ease and with confidence. Just last week, as she was lying in her hospital bed with wires and tubes all around, machines beeping, she and her family had the news on the television in the background. On the news, there was a report about the January 6th hearings. So Mike turned to his mother and asked innocently, "Do you think anything is going to come out of this hearing?" Without missing a beat, Phyllis said, "Yes, a bestseller." I did not expect that. Phyllis battled with cancer for 7 years, sometimes in remission, sometimes not. It was a long, excruciating journey. And through it all, David and her family, were by her side at every moment. Her passing is a great loss for her beautiful family, a great loss for our community. She's passed on an incredible legacy for the future generations. A legacy of good character, a legacy of hard work. And so as Phyllis transitions into the next world, we want to remember her characteristics so that we can continue that legacy on to the future and each take on some of the energy, some of the character that's now going to be missing in the world. She loved her family. She offered incredible advice. She was a brilliant strategic planner. She was a hard worker. She was efficient. She had a sharp wit and a dry sense of humor. She was dedicated to her Jewish identity, dedicated to her Jewish community. Friends, may we all live as Phyllis would want us to live. May she rest in peace, and together we say Amen, Amen, Amen. Friends, the Shiva Minyanim will take place Saturday night and Sunday night at 7 p.m. at the condominium 1111 Herman Drive on the 5th floor. Friends, will rise for the El Male, which is our prayer of comfort, our prayer of connection to Phyllis's soul.
El male rachamim shochein bameromim hametzei menucha nichona tachat kanfei hashechina bimalot kidoshim utorim kizarakia mazirim et nishmat Torah bat shalom v'chayasara shalecha leolamai began eden demenuchata ha'ana ba'al harachamim Hasirea besetek inafecha liolamim Utzror bitzorachayim et nishmata Adonai unachalata V'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen.
Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure to the soul of Phyllis Finger, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, and together we say, Amen, Amen. Friends, we recite the Mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divra kirute v'yamlich malchute, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'bizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah m'vorach le'olam alamei almaya. Yitbarach. Brichu. Amen. 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 May the one who makes peace above bring peace and comfort to all of us here. And together we say, Amen. Amen. We are so sorry for your loss. And if you'll process, we'll follow. How's that sound? You guys want to go down the middle there? I'll ask you to go down the middle of the aisle there, and we'll follow. May you find comfort with all the other mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Thank you all for being here.